Right, she gave me a thumbs up, so good evening. I'd like to welcome you and call to order the July 12th Port Orchard City Council regular meeting. I'd like to open with stating our guiding principles in the actions we are about to take. Are we raising the bar? Are we honoring the past but not living in the past? Are we building connections with outside partners? And is the decision-making process positively impacting diversity, equity, and inclusion? With that, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We have a published agenda. Are there any proposed modifications to this evening's agenda?
Your Mayor, I'd like to pull item, excuse me for a second, item C, 4C off the consent agenda and move it to the business agenda.
Okay, we'll make that item H.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to pull item C, and that would be remote attendance. Motion and a second discussion of moving that to business, item H.
I just wanted to move that. We've talked about it the last two council meetings, but I wanted to do it for transparency and to make sure that people are aware of what we're doing when we're modifying what our actions are as a council.
All right. Further discussion or comment? All in favor of moving that to the business, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that has now been added to business item 7H. Any other modifications or amendments this evening?
No, Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Cacciardi, second by Councilmember Trineri to approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion of the agenda? Go ahead, Councilmember.
I was going to ask if we had to excuse Councilperson Borelli, but I see that she's actually attending.
She is attending remotely, yes. So, all right. Good to see you, Cindy, there online. All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is set for this evening. We are to our first citizen comment period. This citizen comment period is for any items on this evening's agenda. There's a second citizen comment period at the end of the agenda for items not on this evening's agenda. And with that, I will open that citizen comment period, and you're allowed 3 minutes to address the council. Is there anyone wishing to address the council at this moment in time for items on this evening's agenda? One more time. Anyone wishing to make comment for items on this evening's agenda? Hearing none, we'll close this first citizen comment period.
And just a reminder, Mayor, we do have members of the public attending via Zoom.
All right. So if you wish to, before I close, then if you wish to address the council for an item on the agenda, you can use the raise your hand feature and the clerk will promote you and allow your testimony.
Excuse me?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if I cannot hear you, so just for feedback, it's very, very difficult to hear what you're saying.
Okay. Is this better?
Into the microphones, otherwise it's very hard to hear what you're saying.
Okay. Is this better, Cindy?
It's better. All of you, please.
Yep. All right. I'll make sure we talk into the microphone. All right. Anyone raising their hand? Brandy?
Not at this time.
Okay. We'll close the first citizen comment period. We're to our consent agenda. Is there Councilmember Clausen? Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Clausen, a second by Councilmember Diener to approve the consent agenda as amended, which is removing item C and moving to the business. All in favor of approving the amended consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda has been approved. We're to presentation.
Having been
City of Port Orchard, Washington. Do solemnly swear. That I will faithfully. And impartially. Perform the duties of my appointment. As prescribed by law. To the best of my abilities. And that I will support and enforce. The ordinances of the City of Port Orchard. The laws and the Constitution of the State of Washington. And the Constitution of the United States of America.
I think everybody's going on the line somewhere. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good feeling.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chief. All right. Well, we have another presentation, but it's not nearly as riveting. We have a budget presentation by our crack finance director. So.
Oh, he cleared out the whole room.
Do you, Mayor, and then you'll bring him back. Will this work for both?
Well, you can hang out. We're going to talk about the budget. If you could just catch the door on your way out.
Yep.
Thank you.
You have to maybe go in through city invite.
All right.
There.
Got quiet in here all of a sudden.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Council. So what we wanted to do is kind of kick off the budget season. Here we are in July. And I just wanted to go over real briefly as an introduction the budget calendar, kind of what we got coming up over the coming months. And then I wanted to briefly review the priorities that the council set during its retreat, just as a reminder, and it should have been in your packet. So over the last month and 12 days, June, July, we've been developing the budget schedule. We've also adopted the city comprehensive plan updates. Next, we're going to talk about reviewing the priorities and policy direction that council has set for us for this biennial budget. And then throughout this month, the mayor is going to discuss the goals for the 23-24 fiscal years with our department heads. We're going to update our salary and benefits projections. All of that's going to occur in July. As we move into August, again, there's only one council meeting in August, and that's where we'll start doing most of the work. We'll provide instructions to department directors. We'll prepare the revenue estimates, ending fund balances, and officially kind of set the schedule for the next couple months so that everyone can have that on their calendars of meeting times as well as presentations. So in September, we're going to push out the budget request to different departments. The mayor and the finance department are going to review those requests as they're submitted back to us. And we will bring forward the mayor's budget in October. October 1st is our deadline. Then, as you are aware, October is a fairly jam-packed month between adopting our property taxes, going through the public hearing process of reviewing revenue sources, reviewing the preliminary budget, asking questions, and then allowing council then to weigh in on any additional changes, suggestions that they'd like to make to the final budget. And then from there for November, we're really just marching towards the final budget, last adoption, as well as any other considerations for the biennial budget. So the next document you have here, again, this is a summary from your guys' retreat. I'm just going to turn to, if I can, it is page 3, Brandy, budget priorities.
Page 40 in the packet.
Page 40 in your packet, page 3 on my screen. Yep, budget priorities. Again, I just want to review these because these are directly a result of you guys' conversation and direction for the budget. A number of these things have already been achieved in this biennial period as we've kind of moved things forward. So for 23-24, we've identified to hire 1 to 2 additional police officers, so that will be a topic of conversation as we develop the budget. The 60% design for Bay Street, Frederick and Geiger will need roughly $1 million, and that estimate might have changed since this was developed.
But we did get a $1 million grant, award, just recently to help us with that budget process.
Yeah, so maybe that was what the $1 million was targeted, get the $1 million grant.
We didn't know about that yet, but we were trying.
And then there's other personnel decisions to be made, hire mid-level managers, to be determined, again, as we kind of start to develop what the organization looks like over the next 2 years. You have identified Orchard Public Plaza on your list here, although you don't identify that funding to come into play until 25, 26. So we're going to keep it on our radar. I believe we have plans in the work for design and working with consultants. So there will be an element to the budget, but not the full construction, as that's a work in progress. And then 5 and 6. 6 we've already accomplished. Body-worn cameras have already been approved in previous meetings, and that will actually also be a part of the budget amendment tonight, a little later this evening. So I don't know if there's anything specific that you all have or want to talk about from your retreat, but I did want to put this document back in front of you, give you time to think about it. Again, as we're moving through the process and communicating with the mayor, anything specifically you want to see us address.
One other item that was talked in detail about was to a dedicated source of funds for street preservation and maintenance and a utility tax. And we unveiled the first piece of that this evening at the utility committee. You guys, no one at the council wanted to talk about utility taxes in a silo. We wanted it to be a part of the entirety of the rate discussion. And so that first step happened tonight. It'll be seen at the finance committee next week, as well as the work study next week, where everyone will see that body of work. And I laid out a plan that would allow us to put $1.5 million into street preservation and maintenance annually, but it was predicated on a utility tax increase of 3%. So
that can lead us to the next presentation or discussion. I believe it's next, Brandy, is that correct? I'm still on.
Yeah, so this wraps it. There's just kind of a high-level recap of the budget process and the priority assumptions that we were making going in to start that process.
Yes, and then I did want to point out, because this is, again, a nice transition in the retreat, the council did discuss Tbd Sales Tax, transportation funding, utility taxes, transportation funding, and so that leads us to kind of further discussion now on the Tbd Sales Tax review.
This is really a continuation of what, with the additional information that you were asked for in a different format.
And we brought this presentation, the mayor brought a presentation discussion several meetings ago. From there, we took it to the Transportation Committee last week for discussion, review, and additions as requested. Councilmember Chang had requested we add some additional background information regarding the Bethel Road Sedgwick study overall, because we do have several new council members, and as well as a description of what project phase 1 is prior to us kind of diving into the analysis on the Tbd sales tax itself. So with that, I'm actually going to ask our DCD director, who is a part of that review, to cover these 2 slides.
Well, I can't read any of that from here, but
And neither can
We can't either.
in 2017 and 2018, we did a pretty extensive process to revisit the county's plan for the Bethel Corridor Plan, and then sort of reboot that based on our land use assumptions and our public process. And so out of that study and a variety of public meetings, we adopted the Bethel Sedgwick Corridor Plan, and that plan broke the corridor into 5 phases. And so those phases were outlined specifically so that for constructability. And the blue phase, which includes the Salmonberry Roundabout and the Blueberry Roundabout, as well as improvements to Ramsey as a detour route, was to be the first sequence to be built in the corridor, and that was because they wanted to build from the inside out with roundabouts on either end and a road segment that included a median so that you could make U-turns so that no one was losing full turning access to their property. And so the second phase of the corridor was identified as the state highway from SR 16 up to Bethel. The third phase is the intersection of Sedgwick and Bethel. Phase 4 is the Lund-Bethel intersection running south to just north of Salmonberry. And then phase 5 was the final phase, which we're actually working on now because we're building the Mitchell roundabout on Bethel because we were able to get grant funding. So I believe our plan right now is to proceed with the full design of the Bethel Phase 1 project, which is in blue.
Design and right-of-way.
Correct.
Thank you, Nick. So the proposal that we've talked about is focusing for a design right-of-way of Bethel Phase 1 project. And to fund this, we're exploring this Councilmatic Transportation Benefit District 1/10 sales tax. And so the analysis we're going to look tonight reviews that sales tax beginning in fiscal year 2023, with that funding to be focused on completing design and right-of-way, part of Phase 1. And then once design and right-of-way is complete, to talk with the public, explore with the public a potential 2/10 sales tax beginning in fiscal year 2026. Again, this 2/10, if adopted by the public, would replace the 1/10, so we'd only have 2/10 sales tax in place as a funding source for Bethel Phase 1 and other transportation projects as we kind of identify through the planning process. Last but not least, the 2/10 is an attractive option for us once we get to the public piece because the new legislation will allow this 10 tax to be leveraged, meaning we could issue debt to pay for the construction phase of the project, and the tax then can be used to repay the debt service. So that's a real benefit of the 2/10 is that it can be used to pay debt service and then extend the term of that tax beyond the 10-year period that is in place now.
To 20 years, doubles the length.
So we looked at two different scenarios in regards to the revenue. So we're just going to talk about sales, the TBD potential tax revenue here. The blue graph there is flat. And so we looked at one scenario where we just said, what if our taxable sales do not grow any more than they have for 2023 or 2022? So 0% growth in our sales tax projection. And then we looked at an alternative scenario where if taxable sales grew by 5% per fiscal year, what type of revenue would that bring in? So I know it's hard to see on the graph, and the mayor is assisting us by bringing it forward.
Much better.
Yeah,
There's no glare now.
Cut the screen off on the council member.
Yeah, so Jeannie's going to adjust the camera.
But what you find is that the estimate for a flat sales tax is roughly $830,000 per year in additional revenue. With a 5% growth rate, we could be starting at roughly $870,000 and could grow up to $1.3 million of annual tax revenue. This table simply looks at the 0% growth sales tax scenario. Again, that's the more conservative approach when doing this 10-year forecast. But we were trying to understand better how much total revenue we were going to bring in over the 10-year period. And so under this 10-year period, we could potentially bring in roughly $8.3 million of this 1/10 TBD sales tax revenue. So the next couple slides, we actually break down the forecast of potential revenues over the time period of 22 through 25, and that's significant because we're identifying that as our design and right-of-way phase acquisition, and what it looks like from a net perspective. So if you look at the total revenue, we have 2022 revenue starting at $350,000 dedicated for this project, and in 2023, the 1/10 sales tax would begin. Coupled that with transportation impact fee revenue that we have available for the Bethel Phase 1 project, the total revenue for 2023 is roughly $1.1 million. You can see the forecast then for 24 and 25 with roughly 2.2 and 1.5 million dollars over that period. Now, again, in 2025, it drops to 1.5 because the impact fee revenue is maxed out at that point. We only have a certain allocation of impact fee funds which we can use for the Bethel Phase 1. So at that point, we've fully utilized that revenue source. The bottom part of the table here highlights expenditures. And so we anticipate expenditures to cost roughly $344,000 starting in fiscal year 2022. And then if we move forward with design and right-of-way acquisition starting 23 to 25, you see the estimated cost there growing from $640,000 to $2 million roughly in 2025. The easiest part to look at this graph is look down at the net effect on our revenues and expenses. The first year we have a positive balance of $5,187. The second year we have a positive balance of $543,000. Again, and that accumulates each year as it has a positive balance, the net carry forward. And so what this tells us is that with the 1/10 sales tax in place, if our expenses hold as diagrammed here, we could cash flow the design and right-of-way using the 1/10 sales tax, the transportation impact fee funds we have available, and a little contribution from REIT revenues in 24 and 25.
And that projection, Noah, and I know it's difficult to read here, we'll send you these slides. That's with a no-growth sales tax model. And if we get any growth, it is likely we wouldn't need to even touch our REIT funding at all. But we just wanted to show you a balance, most conservative approach, and a balanced, that we had the cash flow to be able to pay for this.
I just want to pause on this slide if there's any questions on this, because then we're going to build on this slide for the next.
This is a slide you guys seen previously. It's future slides that are new. So, and we'll be sure to send this out to you. Go ahead, Councilmember Clausen.
Yeah, just one comment, and when we talked about this last, I just wanted to make sure that if the economy continues to grow at a reasonable rate, which is what we're not planning for in this scenario, as you said, it was flat. When we reach the point where we need to start considering construction, that's when we would ask the community to go to 2/10, at which point we could drop our 1/10. So essentially, we'd be asking the community to add 1/10 over what is already there.
Correct.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. I'm going to move forward to the next slide. So the next slide, I take it a little further out, and I'm now adding in the construction. Again, kind of small to see. But what we have ultimately is a $14.8 million project with only $11.1 million of revenue to pay for that. Again, this is strictly the 1/10 sales tax over the 10-year period. So this helped us to actually understand that we can't cash flow it based on just the 1/10 if the project comes in at $15 million and if we have zero growth on the sales tax. Now we'll reevaluate, of course, once we experience the growth in sales tax, and it could change the picture here. But there is a gap at this point as we're kind of projecting out 10 years. That's a long time. And it's highlighted there, in particular in fiscal year 2026. There at the bottom, I got a red arrow to show that we don't have enough revenue or resources to cover the construction phase, essentially. As we move into construction, we don't have enough funds to cover it, and for the life of the project, we won't have enough funds based on the 1/10. So we would have to look to either grants, property tax revenue, REIT, other sources of funding to make up the gap if we were to stick with the 1/10.
How close does that get if there's like a 3% annual, inflator in that formula?
It gets close. It gets closer, yeah. So that's why we talk about let's complete the design right away, revisit the assumptions, revisit the costs, because not only is sales tax going to go up, but we would anticipate the cost to go up. And I am not building in cost increases into this model. We're taking best available information at this time.
North population. This is flat population.
It's flat population, yeah. We're just kind of holding steady. And as we've experienced in the construction industry, that's not necessarily the best approach. But this is, again, to facilitate discussion about the tax itself. Because what I want to say is, what I wanted to demonstrate is that the tax itself does not completely fund the project. Now we bring into some sales tax growth assumptions, maybe we get closer, but then you have to bring in other assumptions to kind of outweigh the picture.
Councilmember Clausen?
Yeah, no, if we were to move forward with the councilmatic 1/10 or 1%, yeah, 1/10 of 1%, is there a way that we could make sure that any additional funds, be it growth in population or increases in what we would see beyond flatline, would be identified and set aside specifically for this project and not be absorbed into the general fund somewhere? We wouldn't get the benefit of any economy growth or population growth.
We couldn't
That
use
makes
it for
sense.
anything other than transportation projects. And
So would we be able to identify, I'm sure we'd be able to identify what that growth would be, but to make sure that it gets locked for this project and not, I appreciate not going into the general fund, but
Yeah, I mean, this would be a very restricted revenue source, and we would write the language in such a way that was committed for this project and other projects that the council desires for transportation specifically.
thank you.
Yeah. So then what we want to do is kind of take the next step and look at, okay, now we've made it through 2025. We've completed right-of-way and design. We were in the green with a small surplus balance there, $329,000 by the time 2025 closes. If we go to the public and discuss our story and show them designs and talk about the benefit of this, and it gets voter approved, and then 2026, we start collecting 2/10 tax. That's what this is meant to display. It meant to display that we're now taking away the 1/10 that the council has already done, and now it's going to be the voter-approved 2/10 and the cash flows for this project. So now, under a 2/10 scenario, we have sufficient funds over the period. However, we do run into cash flow constraints on the project itself. You'll see here in the graph, we're green in the early couple years, but once we start construction, because it takes time to collect that tax revenue, we will have to work through some project funding solutions to cover the construction during the period. But it looks like the 2/10 is going to get us there overall from a revenue and expense standpoint. And the other benefit is now that it's voter approved, we can issue debt and use this tax to repay the debt. So we just wanted to, again, display that if we have the right story, the right plan, we could potentially fund this Bethel Phase 1 and other, and I will say, and other transportation projects that are a priority to the city if we craft the legislation correctly.
Notice what I'm hearing you say is, and we we don't have the funds to cover in approximately 2026 or some, during construction, but we do overall. And those funds would cover the debt that we would take on?
Yeah, we would do some additional analysis, and I would venture that it will cover the remaining construction costs at the $1.6 million of revenue, if that's the true revenue figure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councilmember Kucharty?
I was just going to make the statement, it's repetitive, but just an overall reminder for everyone that might be listening is if we go down this road, one of the benefits, I think, to the city of Port Orchard's 16,000 residents is that we have, hundreds of thousands of people a year that come to our city to spend money, and they're participating in the funding of these major roadways, and it's not being just shouldered by, the smaller population number, the true residents of 16,000. So I think that'll be important if we go down this road, is to make sure that everyone's aware of how this is benefiting if you're a resident citizen of Port Orchard.
But there's
Yeah.
40,000 plus people that live in our urban growth area and city, and everybody is paying for the,
Tourists coming in, visitors, yes.
I would say it's a selling point for many people that live in the city.
Yeah. Other questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Chang.
I'm thinking out loud, so the vote to become a 2/10 would only be for city residents.
Yes.
But, okay, I get that part. Are we going to have a plan B on the back burner in the case this doesn't pass the first time we want to run it? How are we going to proceed with our transportation projects?
I think,
Or do we not want to talk about that now?
I think at this point in time, we're recommending 1/10. Let's get the design and the right-of-way acquired so we know what our, you know, we think a lot of things right now, but we don't know them. And we'll know because we'll be ready to go to construction, and we'll have an engineer's estimate, and our biggest, one of our biggest expenses is going to be the right-of-way acquisition, and we'll have that in the rearview mirror. So we'll be able to, we probably will have some sales tax growth and other growth in the community. You know, there's a possibility that the 1/10 will get us to where we need to, or darn close. And at that moment in time, we'll discuss this and make a decision. Or if we're not there, or we are there and we want to do this and something more, and we want to tell that story to the community and ask the community that. So I think the recommendation is to do the 1/10 and then have that additional dialogue and the true decisions about what to construct and what they ask the voters for in 3 years.
Well, and something else we wouldn't know in the future, but not only do we have the full design, we've got the right-of-ways, but we have a shovel-ready project, which could open up different doors down the road.
In the grant world, that's true. Councilman McCloskey, you raised your...
That's essentially what I was going to add to this discussion, is that we would have a definite project that we could go try to see if we can get some grant funding that would help reduce the need that we'd have to do if we had that chance. So.
Councilmember Rose Pepe.
So right now, Mayor and Noah, what I'm hearing is this is the most conservative forecasting approach. Looking at that, so we're talking about possibly going 2%, but we have a lot of options and unknowns right now, and this is to kick it off and get shovel ready, as Councilmember Cucciari has pointed out. So this is the best alternative for us to move forward.
We think so. When we held the retreat, 1/10 wasn't an option. Right. The legislature just took action on this and made it available to us. And I will say, I was recently at the Joint Transportation Committee that I'm sitting on for AWC, and I had a senator, we were talking about cities not taking, you know, there's 281 cities in our state, and only slightly more than 100 have taken advantage of the Transportation Benefit District. We have a car tab, but very few. And so I pointed out, though, but you just made this option available to us. And I said, and our community is discussing it. So there was the point they were making, as we were discussing the allocation of federal money between the state and local governments, was tired of cities coming into his office asking for help with funding, but they're not utilizing the tools that the legislature has provided them. And I said, then make it a box on your grant application. If you haven't leveraged your local options, then I shouldn't be available. That this, you know, additional help from the state shouldn't be available. And you know, he made a note, so we'll see where it goes.
Nice. Just a quick question, and you may know this or not, but you could probably find it pretty easily. Do you know when the last time the city experienced a year-over-year decrease in property tax revenue?
Sales tax revenue?
Sales tax, I'm sorry, sales tax revenue.
2007. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, this would be interesting to see that, just maybe look at a 20-year trend.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we were, Alan Martin, I remember him coming and saying he had more money in his personal money market accountant than the city did. So there were tough times.
Brag.
Yes, Councilman
I
Chang.
guess the only thing I'd add is that I appreciate the care that's gone into this, and I think it's a very clear and meticulous presentation. The only thing that I'm a little sad about is that we're only talking about phase 1 and not the whole Bethel corridor.
$75 million, and even 3/10 wouldn't get us there.
Yeah, it's just that, you know, when we did Tremont, it was conceptually, we got the whole thing done. It wasn't phased, and maybe that was the problem. But I think, you know, with people with a short attention span, they'll say, you're only doing phase 1? You know, we'll still have an issue between Salmonberry and Walmart, which is another phase. And we have to get started, but I think...
It was purposeful when we did this study. We had to break it into phases. To be honest, we were way out of over our skis on Tremont. And I mean, Mark will back me on this. We had no business doing a $22 million project, and when we had $1 million in cost overruns, Mark and I were over at PSRC with our hat in our hands, begging our peers for some help. That was a heavy lift for our city, and we're in a better place even today. But there's no way we could do a $75 million project. Yeah, Council,
Well,
go
I
ahead.
think also when the city took on 5 federal projects in 2005, that was a completely different landscape. Nowadays, and it happened in 2013, that all projects now have to be fully funded. You can't even get through to get funding for a project unless it's documented fully funded. So all jurisdictions are having to break projects into segments. We got $8 million from TIB that saved that project. That's unheard of. So there's no way we would get a $50 million project funded without breaking it into pieces. And if you go in with a singular project, it would never get approved because you would never have that kind of lift financially. We have to break things into pieces.
And
Because the rules have changed.
yeah, and I think as we finish this design, I think we need to be rolling right into another segment, and then followed by another segment. And I think it's doable in 15 years, but it's not going, or 20, but it's not going to be overnight. Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate this detailed report and listing, and I really also appreciate the conservative approach on it. These numbers are very consistent with zero growth, and we all know, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that we continue to grow, maybe not as fast as we have been, but we continue to grow moving forward. So this looks very positive to me, and I'm excited. Our citizens have spoken. They've told us traffic's the #1 issue they have. We also hear of it weekly from our citizens, constituents, that traffic's getting worse and worse. I think this is a great way to get moving on things, take small chunks at a time, and get this traffic issue moving forward.
Just a reminder, with the council action to do the 1/10 of 1%, what's the total length of time that can be in place?
10 years.
And then can you ever do it again?
At the end of 10 years, that future council could take action, provided the legislation is still there for us.
Got it. Because I was just thinking through, from a trust perspective, right? You don't often see taxes go away, and I think that resonates with people, and so there may be a lack of trust if, hey, if you vote the 2, we'll take away 1. Would there be a strategy just to ask for 1 because we have 1 in place to get to the 2? You know what I'm saying? Just to think through that.
Well, the challenge to that, though, is we want to be able to bond it. So I think we'd want the 2, but that tax goes away too. It sunsets too.
Sure, exactly.
2/10, even voter approved.
Just to make sure that we have to show the community that the other one goes away and it's not 1 + 2 = 3.
Yes, I agree.
And I did want to answer your question. So the last time we had a sales tax decline was, we had actually back-to-back years of decline. 2008, we had a 1% decline, and then 2009, we had an 18% tax decline. Yeah, but 2008 and 2009, so quite a while ago.
1 year off.
If you recall, all the other revenues that were declining very fast in 2008
yeah.
and 2009, not surprising.
Great recession. All right. Do you have any more in your presentation, Noah?
I think the last one was just to
comment in regards to that, if I may. It's just that, if we do see that kind of a slowdown, all it does is push us out another year or whatever. We won't have the design completed by 26, it might be 27. So
Right.
It's not the end of the world.
Exactly.
That's true. We might have the design done, but we might not have all the right-of-way acquired, because that's going to be the more
Yeah,
expensive.
I mean, we just
So,
have
but
to
we're
phase it
working
based
forward.
on what we're seeing, so.
That's right.
So the last slide was really just to turn it back to the council for discussion and kind of give us direction. We're here to provide information. Yes, to provide some analysis of what we think this tax would do and how we could use it. So the mayor has put together his proposal, and it's up to you guys to give us direction now.
We gotta, this is kind of our last presentation of this. We would hope that our goal would be have it in place maybe the end of the year, but Councilmember Clausen.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, does the legislation lay out the steps that need to be taken, or is it just,
You guys
we
take.
have the next council meeting, we can impose
We
this?
we could do it in 2 weeks, but, or at least have the first public hearing.
Well, that's my question,
And
is do we have
then,
to have a public hearing, or is that what we want?
even if we didn't have to, I think
Well,
we should.
I would agree with you, but I was just trying
Yeah,
to figure out
I-
what are the specifics, are there any?
A public hearing, and I mean, the 2/10, of course, is going to be a vote of the people.
Yeah.
This councilmanic action would be as fast as you guys want to have it. I think we're still dealing with the park impact fees, and we're dealing with the sewer and water rates, and so I would recommend maybe September.
No, I think that's perfectly appropriate. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we followed the required steps to move this forward, but I also agree with your comment that I wouldn't be comfortable of doing this without having an opportunity for the community to come in through public hearings or whatever, to make sure that the community has an opportunity to weigh in on this decision.
Comfortable seeing that first public hearing after our summer break and the first meeting in September?
Fine with me.
Yeah, I was gonna make the comment that I think it's really important that we do everything we can to engage the public as we look to make decision on this particular issue, because it will absolutely have an impact when we go back to them to ask them to vote, right? And so if they think that this is being done behind closed doors or not entirely open, it will hurt kind of that end game. And so I think we make sure we do it right on the front, and it'll help years, down the road.
It's one of those issues where we're going to engage
Don't rush this.
our public information contract employee.
Exactly.
And, try to get an article in the paper about it and what it is, our plan, and what.
So I think it makes an awful lot of sense. We just need to tell the story, share the story, and get the appropriate feedback.
Maybe our utility billings and whatever method we have to communicate, so.
I think Facebook is in this scenario, and press releases and that type of stuff, and putting on our website are our best tools. Yeah.
No, you covered what I wanted to say about the communication, because that's where we we don't fall down on it. We don't make that connection somehow. And they may even be sending the mayor or his designated representative to various clubs and stuff to get out even further. I think this is an opportunity. I think Sean, talked about it, is, building that trust and making sure that the facts are out there. So I fully support it and what it wants to do. It's how do we make that connection? And I think, John, you're right. September, and Sean said it when, everybody's back, that'd be the best way to do it. But any way we can support you, Mayor, let us know.
Councilmember Chang.
The only thing I would add is that this is a very different audience than the park impact fees. I mean, your average public city resident is not as concerned about park impact fees as something like this. The only thing I can think that's close is might be interesting to see what kind of outreach the county did when they did their 1/10 of 1% increases.
Not much.
We need to do better than that,
Yeah.
obviously. But yeah.
I think,
Not much.
I think your comment, at least the way I perceived it, and I agree with you, Fred, that the impact fees, you're dealing with a whole different audience. It was more of staff workload, internal workload, to be able to get all these things completed before we take on more tasks internally, and making sure that we have the time to do it right. At least that's what
I think there's no reason we can't get, I'll get Josh working on a press release, gather all these facts and, you somewhat write the article for the newspaper and send it out in a press release. And I'm speaking at the Morning Rotary Club here in a couple weeks. I can definitely reach out to the Chamber of Commerce and try to get on their agendas. I spoke the state of the city, but this is, I've mentioned it. It was a retreat. Yeah, we're considering these things. Well, now we're more than considering it. We're about to act on it. And it was well received everywhere I've talked about it. Councilmember Chang, or Clausen.
yeah, the other end of the table. Just a question, Noah, what's the mechanics if the council was to approve this? How long does it take to get implemented and before we start seeing, just out of curiosity?
That's a great question. So I think that is the next steps, is that staff would come back with a plan, looking at the statute, working with legal counsel to back in to earliest, and then factor in public outreach, anything that the mayor and council want to build into the schedule. So I guess the first part is kind of getting either direction of yes, proceed, or no, we appreciate the analysis, but we're done here. And if it's yes, proceed, then the next step is to develop that schedule and plan and report back to council.
So is it realistic for our August meeting? We only have one in August to develop that schedule and know when, council takes action sometime in September or October. Is it 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days for the state to start collecting that money and us to start showing up in the city's
think
coffers? That's one of the
90 days
questions.
is optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And which is gonna, if we're wanting this.
I think it's sooner than that, but it's gonna be, I
Yeah.
think it's usually at least 6 months.
And
But
that
we can verify it.
can factor into our decision-making process. If it's a long lead time, I'm kind of hoping we're gonna build this into next year's budget. And so maybe September is when we really want to act on it.
Update in August, that'd be great.
So we'll
Well,
work towards.
I picked up on a comment that you made. September, with holding public meetings, public hearings, is it reasonable to assume we're gonna get it done in one?
No, I think we would,
Maybe the 1st of October that we
our normal
get it.
processes would be to open that public hearing in the first meeting in September, continue it to the end of September, and take action that last meeting in September, likely.
I'm all for moving this as fast as reasonably possible, keyword reasonably. And then I want to make sure that we are able as a group, I think, and I think you're going to do this anyways, be able to track that outreach so that when people talk to us and say, well, what are you doing? We can say, well, here's the checklist of all that we've done. And I want to be able to share that story.
I can, and it's in my mayor's report, and I'll give you the data. We don't have many people showing up here, and not even many watching us on Zoom, but our YouTube channel is watched a lot. And I've got some data in my mayor's report that I intend to share. So that's where we're reaching people. They're watching and matter of fact, candidates and potential new employees. That's part of, what goes on here, and the collegial nature here. It doesn't exist in a lot of other places. And I think that's a piece of why we are an employer of choice for many, many folks. And I've heard that from new employees. So we are reaching people. They're just not in the room.
I'm curious about the numbers.
Yep. All right. We wrapping this up here?
I am done here.
All right. We're
And
gonna
so just to confirm, the consensus is to go forward and bring back an agenda, schedule, plan.
for that first meeting in August. When would we see the tax from an action date? And I'll get Josh going on an outreach. I don't think I want to do that outreach yet, but I at least want it somewhat written, and we'll take a lot of this information from here to build that. All right, let's head to our business items. The first is item 7A, adoption of an ordinance amending the 2021-2022 budget. Mr. Crocker, this is you again.
Give me 1 second to get back on the agenda here. Council and Mayor, before you tonight is a budget amendment to our 21-2022 biennial budget. We have discussed these changes at Finance Committee. Most of these budget adjustments are cleanup in nature, meaning that they are actions the council's already taken. I am coming back behind it to recognize either the revenue and/or additional expenditure authorized through contracts. So I just want to take a couple minutes to go through them and then answer any questions you may have. The current expense fund, again, the DCD has obtained a Housing Action Plan implementation grant. And so you see here I'm increasing the revenues as well as recognizing the additional expenditures to come from that work of $75,000. We're increasing revenues of $1.4 million for the ARPA funds that we have received. And we did just receive those monies in June, so we have those now in the fund. The council has already approved us to go forward and replace servers and implement them sooner than later. Again, we talked about the supply chain issues, and so council said go forward, obtain the contracts, and start replacing those servers. So I'm going to factor in the $135,000 that we discussed prior. I'm increasing building inspection services by $210,000 to reflect all the activity that department has incurred over the last year or so. Increasing transfers to come out of our general fund to our sewer capital for those ARPA dollars to be budgeted for the marina pump station. And lastly, the final impact of all these adjustments is a reduction of ending fund balance of $345,000. And again, that really comes from the additional expenditure authority for the IT server replacement, as well as the additional building inspection services of $210,000. The city street fund, we have identified a grant that we originally budgeted to be received into that fund. After reviewing the grant and working with the grantor, it's more appropriate to be receipted and paid for out of our Fund 304. So we're going to back that entry off of our 002 fund, our street fund, and increase that entry to Fund 304. So again, another cleanup item. The next C and D is actually transferring, or excuse me, moving expenditure authority from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2022. This is a budget adjustment. It is not an amendment. We are not increasing expenditure authority. We are just moving it to the next fiscal year so it can be used as Public Works is moving forward with their transportation and road work this summer. The Criminal Justice Fund, we talked about the body-worn cameras contracts, which has already been approved. Again, this is a cleanup effort to increase expenditure authority for the police department and reduce ending fund balance to pay for that. 107, again, we are moving expenditure authority from 21 to 2022. This is not an increase in expenditure authority. It's just putting it in the correct fiscal year for those community events. The Fund 109 is our real estate excise tax fund. In here, we are actually going to be transferring out $1,500,000 to Fund 304 for the Bay Street pedestrian path right-of-way property acquisitions. And we do have some other business activity on that item tonight. We will reduce ending fund balance by the $1.5 million. The impact fee fund, we have realized more impact fee revenue than we originally budgeted. So I'm increasing the revenue by $200,000 and increasing transfers out to Fund 304 for TIP 1.15, which is the Pottery Avenue non-motorized project, and that's an amount of $40,000. We're also increasing transfers out to Fund 302 for the McCormick Woods splash pad, an amount of $420,000 from park impact fees. And these two actions, we will reduce our 2022 ending fund balance by $260,000. For our impact fee fund, again, we have a transfer coming in to work on the McCormick splash pad. Estimated $420,000 of additional expenditure authority is needed. So we are transferring that in on the revenue side and then increasing expenditure so the Public Works Department can complete that project this fiscal year.
I think we learned at the Utility Committee tonight that you might have to adjust that again.
I hope not, but we'll see. We have the park impact fee funds to do it, so that's the good news. We've been obligating those funds all along. If you recall, when we set the budget, we had a $250,000 splash pad budget in each month. We would continue to obligate park impact fees for that project. We were not budgeting, but we would obligate because we anticipated costs to come in higher than expected. And so we have the funds available to now budget and complete that project. So Fund 304 really had the biggest transfers coming in. Again, that's our street transportation capital projects fund. So in these requests, we're bringing in revenue for the Bay Street pedestrian pathway, the grant for the Lippert sidewalk improvements, the grant we received for the complete street for TIP 1.15. We're increasing transfers in from I believe it is Fund 111 for TIP 1.15. We're actually going to be moving some revenue from 21 to 2022, so not a change in the budget, just a change in the fiscal period, because that is federal reimbursements, federal grant money that we did not apply for in 21, but we are going to apply for in 2022 as we complete a lot of these Bay Street right-of-way acquisitions. Again, we're going to increase expenditure authority related to tip sidewalk for the 254, increase expenditure authority for the Pottery non-motorized avenue project, increase expenditure authority for our Bay Street acquisition, and we're again moving expenditure authority from fiscal year 21 to 2022. Again, that 888,400. It's not an increase in expenditure authority there. It's just a shift from fiscal year 21 to 22 to complete property acquisitions. Moving forward, we got our water capital fund. In there, we have several agreements with McCormick, and so we recognize that we need to increase our expenditure authority for those payments as more billing activity occurred. They made more payments, and so we actually owe them more reimbursements as a part of the agreements. So I'm factoring those in here. And that 413 also plays into 414, which is where we actually make the payments out of. So we are increasing that authority and moving it by fiscal years. 421 is the storm drainage operating fund. Again, we're budgeting expenses of $49,000 to be paid for the TIP 1.13 Lippert sidewalk project. And we'll use our fund balance to do that. Sewer operations. This one we're actually requesting additional expenditure authority for the biennium. And these expenses are related to on-call services, pass-through contracts, monthly utility taxes, state utility taxes, and mostly this amendment is focused on the Pottery Lift Station, which was roughly $275,000 of unbudgeted expenses at the time we set the budget. So that's taken a big lump of these additional increases. Fund 433 is, again, our sewer capital fund where we anticipate paying for a marina pump station. So this is a simple recognition of the transfers coming into that fund and the ending fund balance increasing appropriately. And then the last fund we are amending here is Fund 632, which is our wastewater utility fund. Now, traditionally, I'll say the last two biennial budgets, we did not have to budget this. Working with the auditors this last session, they worked with us and said that we did need to budget this now going forward. So we have reported this fund the last 2 years on our financial statements. So we have been covered in that, and we thought it made sense to budget it. Since we are reporting it, we have to budget it. And in the future, we intend on kind of reworking this fund number to fit our fund scheme, which means for our sewer, we have a 431 operating, we have a 432 stabilization for sewer, we have a 433, which is our capital, and we have a 434, which is debt service, and then we would have a 435, which would be our wastewater utility fund. So that will either wrap into this biennial budget process going forward, or if I have time, I'll bring it back in the fall. So with all these amendments, you can see on the pages 4 through 6 the impact to the various funds. Again, all the funds end in the positive and end within our policy thresholds. And most of these amendments are just really cleanup action to reflect actions are taken by council.
Charlie.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance amending the 2021-2022 biennial budget as adopted by ordinance number 035-20 and as amended.
Second it.
By Councilmember Cacciardi, second by Councilmember Clausen. Any discussion or questions for Mr. Crocker? Very detailed. I know that it was just as detailed at the Finance Committee here a few weeks ago, too. Appreciate your thoroughness in this, Mr. Crocker. All right, you'll be voting on the adoption of an ordinance amending the 2021-2022 budget. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the ordinance has passed. We're at item B, which is adoption of an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Codes, Chapter 10.12, relating to civil infractions for parking enforcement. Ms. Archer, this is you.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Before the council this evening is an ordinance that would amend Port Orchard Municipal Code Chapter 10.12, which is your stopping, standing, parking code, related to parking enforcement. Council will recall that in 2021, you adopted an ordinance that shifted your parking enforcement officers from commissioned positions in the police department to non-commissioned positions. And the impetus for this was a law that was passed by the state legislature that required that individuals with limited commissions undergo the Reserve Academy, essentially becoming law enforcement officers. And yet, shockingly, the state did not fund the training necessary to create reserve officers. And so our training facility, CJTC, for the state has identified that shortcoming. And it is very difficult, if not impossible, to become limited commissioned individual in the state of Washington currently. An audit of enforcement mechanisms throughout your code, and all cities are grappling with this in the state of Washington, identified quite a few things that are considered to be civil infractions as opposed to criminal charges that would require a police commission. One of those areas of the law is parking enforcement, and parking is very clearly dictated in both state law and now with this ordinance in your municipal code and even predating this ordinance, but it's clarified in this ordinance, as a non-criminal civil infraction, prosecuted in a manner that is entirely distinct from the criminal process. With that in mind and with that context in place, the council asked staff to prepare legislation to shift and to acknowledge parking enforcement as a non-commissioned civilian-filled position, and due to staffing related discussions that were occurring, shifting that workforce from the from the police department to the community development department. There are other machinations that are occurring behind the scenes to make that transfer occur. But one of the key steps is modifying the code pertaining to parking enforcement in order to ensure that there aren't any gaps and ensure that the parking enforcement officers, not in the common term officers, are recognized and are authorized through your municipal code to issue civil infractions as employees of the community development department. You may recall hearing recently about City of Seattle and them having to refund quite a few parking violations related to a very similar issue. I spoke with legal counsel for the city and I reviewed the legislation, and it appears that they didn't take this action that we are taking this evening, and that the action itself that they took was just to shift those employees and provide that everything followed with them while their code still referred to them as law enforcement special commissioned. Thus why the mayor had to give them special commissions. So we have gone a step further than Seattle, and we are ensuring that our code, independent of the commissioning discussion, allows for civilian parking enforcement officers to issue these civil infractions. This, I do want to flag though, this is the first step in this process. This will give us enough to be able to get parking enforcement online, get those individuals out there issuing tickets and enforcing the code. But this has led me to audit Title 10 in its entirety. And so there will be additional follow-up legislation coming to you this year because this disclosed some other issues that we'd like to address to ensure that everything is smooth sailing moving forward. So I just add that as a note so that when you hear more coming in the future, that's why, and you thought, we were done with that. There is more coming, but not as it relates to redressing this particular issue of transitioning those individuals to a new department. So that was a lot. I'm happy to stand for questions.
Okay, Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 10.12 of the Port Orchard Municipal Code pertaining to parking enforcement.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Clausen, a second by Councilmember Rosapepe. And I just want to, in full disclosure, in these changes, there are certain functions that require a law enforcement officer. And the three that jump to mind here: towing a vehicle, car tab enforcement, and handicap enforcement are the three, if I'm not correct, Chief?
That's correct.
And so those particular actions, if they're seen out there, our parking enforcement is going to need to make a referral to our police department, which is stretched pretty thin, so it's probably not realistic that those particular actions are going to get enforced as much as they used to be. I'm just being realistic. So, go ahead, Councilmember Diener.
So I'm not sure how parking tickets are contested now, I'll admit, but does this change how they'll be contested?
Slightly. They'll still mechanically go through the same process in front of your municipal judge and the municipal court process, but the individual attesting to the content will now be a parking enforcement officer. And there were some other slight modifications to what the model traffic ordinance had in place, which was contemplating law enforcement. It's just nomenclature changes that were made, but I think mechanically the process will look the same.
So will that person then have to be here to attest that they did see what they saw and they wrote up each time a ticket is contested?
To the same extent a law enforcement officer would have to have appeared,
Yeah.
the parking enforcement officer will have to appear as well.
Okay. And does that happen frequently now?
You know, I
Well,
cannot
not-
answer
maybe
that.
not right
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working hand in hand with the court administrator as well on this. So, yeah.
I don't believe that our parking
A lot of
enforcement
parking,
goes
okay.
to the court very often, or if ever. I don't recall ever seeing them up there.
No, there were generally photographs taken, and that was all that the court would request, would be to be able to see those photographs.
Other questions? Councilmember
Ms.
Tremaine.
Archer, thank you for referencing and clarifying the City of Seattle's issues. Most of us read about that, and that's one of the first things that came into my mind when I was reviewing this, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Questions or comments? All right, Chief, don't do a happy dance after this action. Hey, Chief.
No happy dance quite yet. I'm helping Ms. Archer. This is a pretty big lift, but it's the right thing to do. So we have plenty of work ahead of us.
Have a motion and a second related to the adoption of an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code, Chapters 10.12, relating to civil infractions for parking enforcement. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the ordinance has passed. We're to item C, which is adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Excel Business Systems, Inc. for the public work and admin copiers maintenance. And Councilmember Terneri, since this is your business, you should probably step into the back, anywhere you want to go, just step out of the room.
We'll call you back.
Yes. And, Ms. Wallace, this is you.
Yep. Good evening, Mayor, Council. So the city purchased two copiers, one that was located or is located in the Public Works Shop, and the other one is located at City Hall in the Finance Administrative Department in 2019 with a 3-year maintenance agreement. The copiers' maintenance agreements are set to expire July 31st, 2022, and staff wishes to enter into a new 3-year maintenance agreement. However, pursuant to RCW 42.23.030, subsection 6A, it limits the amount of a municipal officer can benefit from a contract in which the total amount received under the contract or contracts to be $1,500 in any calendar month. Because a council member does not meet that threshold, the city is interested in continuing to have Excel Business Systems, Inc. provide the maintenance for those two copiers. So therefore, staff recommends that the council adopt a resolution and authorize the mayor to execute a maintenance agreement with Excel Business Systems for the two copiers. The physical impact of those maintenance copiers, the funds have been designated as part of the 2021 and 22 biennial budget and will be budgeted correctly for the 23-24 biennial budget if approved by the city council.
Councilmember Rosa Pepe.
Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution and authorize the mayor to execute a maintenance agreement with Excel Business Systems Incorporated for two copiers as presented.
Second.
By Councilmember Rosa Pepe, second by Councilmember Diener. And just the two copiers we purchased from Excel were purchased prior to Councilmember Terneri becoming council member. We add these maintenance agreements that are now expiring. Councilmember Trineri's business, this business is the only provider of this service on the Kitsap Peninsula, anywhere on the peninsula. We would have to go likely to King County, and the travel time is just much more convenient. The pricing is appropriate, and it's under the thresholds for under state law. So that's the reason. We have 2 copiers in a future action that we're leasing, and those leases are going to be expired. Historically, we have gotten new machines. We've had these machines looked at. They're in excellent condition. With supply chain issues, it makes sense to, the buyouts on these are a couple $1,000, $2,000 to $3,000 a piece, and we're going to probably take similar action and put maintenance agreements on those copiers when we buy those also, because our IT department just is not equipped to maintain these type of machines. So, but that's a future action. So, Councilmember Rose Pepe?
It's a curiosity question. As we go more towards scanning, et cetera, are we starting to see our copying usage go down over time? Or, just curiosity.
I think the biggest reduction in our copying cost when we went from outsourcing our I can't even talk, our utility billing statements, which is many years ago, and then when we went to virtual packets. So outside of that, it's pretty stagnant. Some days we're printing more than others, but I think realistically we're at the lowest that we're going to be.
Thank you.
And this was a monumental shift, these devices.
Yes.
Each of you was getting a ream or more of paper in a binder 3 times a month, times 7. And so that's where the biggest shift is purchasing these devices, which we didn't even know COVID was coming when we did that, and it saved our bacon when it came to virtual meetings because we already had these devices in hand. So, but yeah, that's the outsourcing our billing, utility billing, and the council meeting packets were our 2 big changes. Other than that, it's probably growing a little bit because we have more employees.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, you'll be voting on adoption of resolution approving a contract with Excel Business Systems, Inc. for the Public Works and Admin Copiers Maintenance. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the contracts have been approved. And thank you, Councilmember Rose Pepe. And for the record, I know Councilmember Charity's got up and left. He left because he recused himself from the last business item. I just want, for those watching online that didn't catch that, I want to make that clear. All right, we're to item D, adoption of a resolution and accepting the responsible bidder and authorization to authorize the mayor to execute an agreement for the city's official newspaper. Ms. Wallace.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. It is that time of year again where pursuant to RCW 35A.40.210 and 35.23.352 subsection 7 requires that each city or town designate an official newspaper of general population of less than 20,000. The newspaper shall be of general circulation within the city or town and shall be published regularly, at least once a week. Request the newspaper publication services was noticed and published on June 10th as well as June 21st of this year, with bids being received no later than 4 p.m. on June 23rd. The city received 2 bids, one from Kitsap Sun and the other one from Port Orchard Independent. Kitsap Sun's cost per single line was $1.96. Their circulation numbers for the city of Port Orchard within the city limits was 851, with the South Kitsap urban growth area being at 1,430. Port Orchard Independent's bid came in at $1.90 per single line. Their circulation numbers with the city of Port Orchard within city limits was 843, and the South Kitsap urban growth area at 1,045. In reviewing the bids submitted, it was determined that the Port Orchard Independent submission is the lowest responsive bidder. Therefore, staff recommends that the council adopt a resolution accepting this bid and authorize the mayor to execute a contract with the Port Orchard Independent as the as the city's official newspaper.
Councilmember Diener.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution accepting the bid and authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with the Port Orchard Independent as the city's official newspaper as presented.
Second it.
Motion by Councilmember Diener, second by Councilmember Clausen. I will say, go ahead. Cindy, you have a question?
No, I was gonna raise my hand for a motion.
Okay. All right. Brandy and Charlie and I met on this particular issue. Operationally, this isn't ideal with a weekly newspaper because when we meet tonight, tomorrow morning, we've missed the deadline for Friday's newspaper. So it's operationally, it's going to cause us some headaches, but we need to follow the state statute. They are the low bidder, and there isn't a provision for a daily versus a weekly newspaper. And so as a result, we need to take the low bid. So, Councilmember Picciardi?
So is that, we've had this discussion before. Just remind me, when you're trying to analyze the true cost of this, is it literally the $1.96 versus the $1.90, or is it take into account circulation? Is it the cost per person that we're reaching? Because if it's the other way, then the Kitsap Sun's bid is actually cheaper.
It's truly the cost, and it's not the cost per person.
So someone could have a newspaper with a circulation of 2 and charge $1.50 a line, and
Go ahead.
It is a bit more nuanced than that. We can set the parameters for the call to bid in a mechanism that's compliant with state law, but still elicits more specific information. If that were the council's direction for years in the future, we could get very creative with that. I think there's obviously risk parameters as to your creativity level, but the statute restricts us from utilizing circulation other than weekly as a criteria. It does also speak to circulation to a certain extent. And so under the parameters as dictated by state law, they still comply. The low bidder is responsive based on the existing call for bid criteria that are based exclusively on the statutory requirements. We could potentially play with that in the future.
I think it's worth looking at. I mean, just to make it easier on staff. I mean, just that alone. But so that's for you guys to decide.
We continue to have it part of our legislative priorities that, gosh, why isn't online sufficient or a website? This is a bit archaic, but.
Sorry to have brought it up again.
Yeah, no, we'll talk about it next year. Councilmember Shane.
Sean, I'm glad you brought it up because I can see that it's obviously the lowest bidder. I mean, we see that in black and white, but do we ever get to consider the actual lowest cost? Because if we have to make deadlines to meet our meetings, and we have 30-day deadlines, or planning has a meeting.
That's what she just spoke to, right?
But
There are
what I'm thinking is, if we're
to
still
look at that.
advertising in the Sun, and we're still paying, so we're paying for 2 publications, do we ever get to consider what the lowest
We might,
cost
but
is?
we still have to publish in our official newspaper, even if we put it in the Sun.
And to your point, I think the modifications to the call for bid we could make would be if we were able to monetize the impacts of a weekly versus a monthly or versus a daily, and then factor that in and have the bidders respond. There's potential ways to elicit that information and factor it in. We just need to be very creative in how we do it and in compliant with the law.
I also haven't seen a print copy of the paper.
We subscribe at the city.
So it
You have to
It exists.
subscribe.
Okay.
It exists.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in over a year.
Yeah, they used to provide it for free, and that's how their circulation was historically so high, because they were providing the news and surviving on advertising revenue. And the model's changed, and they don't provide that. And so it's unfortunate. I mean, I value our weekly newspaper, our local newspaper, but our business operational needs are different than what they can accommodate, and it's challenging for us.
And I believe, Mayor, that we continue to make that point with the legislature.
We do. But the newspaper industry also has lobbyists. All right. Further questions on this? I don't think any of us likes it, but it is what it is. Be voting on the adoption of a resolution accepting the responsible bidder and authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for the city's official newspaper. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes. We're to item E, adoption of a resolution authorizing the purchase of Kitsap County tax parcel number 4027 is at -032-001-0102 and 4027-023-018-003 and payment of associated relocation benefits for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Your Honor, council members. The city's right-of-way acquisition and relocation consultant, Tierra Right-of-Way Services Limited, in conjunction with the city, identified Kitsap tax parcel numbers 4027-032-001-0102 and 4027-023-018-0003 property as a necessary acquisition for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project. Accordingly, the consultant has negotiated terms of a voluntary purchase of the property as well as associated relocation benefits, including payments towards a replacement property in accordance with resolution number 028-16, right-of-way acquisition procedures, and the city's relocation assistance program. On July 5th, 2022, the city's public works director executed the concurrence and authorized for payments of just compensation for the city's purchase of Kitsap County tax parcel number 4027-032-001-0102 and 4027-023-018-0003 in the amount of $725,000 plus incidentals and closing costs, subject to council approval of the purchase. The city has not yet received the settlement statement with the final amount of closing costs, but estimates those amounts will not exceed $10,000. Additionally, on July 8, 2022, the Public Works Director executed the following documents for the following relocation benefits, subject to council approval of these benefits. Voucher 1, a voucher providing benefits for the replacement property inspection in the total amount of $733.53, which is paid to the home inspector, aka relocation housing payment. A voucher providing benefits for a replacement property inspection in the amount of $550, paid to the home inspector, aka relocation housing payment. And note that the eligible benefit amount of $550 and not the invoiced amount of $650. Voucher 3, which is a voucher providing benefits for a replacement property inspection in the total amount of $400, paid to the home inspector, aka relocation housing payment. And a voucher providing benefits for a self-move by the property owner supported by a move expense agreement, residential and relocation assistance in the amount of $7,400, again, aka moving benefit payment. A voucher providing benefits of the purchase of the relocation property supported by a price differential report and relocation assistance in the total amount of $677,550.90. Incidental closing costs estimated at $1,515.50, plus a purchase price differential of $676,000 payment. The owner has not yet received the settlement statement with the final amount of incidental closing costs, but estimates that those amounts will not exceed $5,000. Please note all expenditures associated with the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project have been identified within the project funding estimate, or PFE, and are grant eligible. Additionally, this acquisition is for the residential purchase and relocation benefits only. A future action for the business relocation is still pending. Recommendation for this property acquisition and associated relocation benefits as needed for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the following: the mayor's execution of all documents necessary to effectuate the purchase, including but not limited to a real estate purchase and sale agreement in the amount of $725,000, the warranty deed, the real estate or the real property voucher, the real estate excise tax affidavit form, and e-payment of additional associated incidental closing cost escrow fees in the amount not to exceed $10,000 for an authorized total acquisition payment not to exceed $735,000. Approve relocation payments, vouchers number 1, 2, and 3 for replacement property inspections in the total of $1,683.53. approve relocation payments for voucher number 5 towards the purchase of a replacement property, incidental closing costs at $1,550.50, plus a purchase price differential of $676,000 for an estimated total of $677,515.90, plus the payment of additional associated incidental closing costs, escrow fees, if any, in the amount not to exceed $5,000 for a total authorized amount not to exceed $682,515.90, and approve the moving benefit payment, which is voucher 4, in the amount of $7,400.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 066-22, authorizing the purchase of Kitsap County tax parcel numbers 4027, 032, 001, 0102, and 4027, 023, 018, 0003 for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project and the payment of associated relocation and moving benefits.
Seconded.
By Councilmember Cacciardi, a second by Councilmember Clausen. Go ahead, Councilmember Rosapepe.
Yes, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank Mr. Jones and Mr. Rusk for working with our agents and getting this resolved in a satisfactory manner for both parties.
Councilmember Cacciardi?
Just for the record, on that last bullet point right above the motion for consideration, there's just a little typo. If we maybe just clean that up for the documents, it says 7,000, 4,000. I mean, it's just an extra zero there. I think it'd be just nice to clean that up.
We'll get that corrected. Apologies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Councilmember Chang?
I just had two small questions. One is, do we know, is there a replacement property that was found? And is that in the city or is that so elsewhere?
Adjacent city.
Okay. And what is the total amount of compensation that they're receiving? It's so far.
The total amount of compensation receiving for the residential relocation, because again, the business relocation is still pending, is if you add up all the numbers on the staff report, I don't have that math and I don't know if Mark does either.
I was writing it down here.
Okay. So it includes the purchase price for the property, which is approximately $735,000. It includes $1,600 in vouchers for inspections. It includes $7,400 for the moving benefit, and then it includes the purchase of the new home in the amount of up to the amount of $682,000. So you add all those numbers I just said together.
1.4?
About 1.4.
Right. So 1.5, and then there'll be the business relocation. I believe that was about.
No, we don't have an estimate, but we have statutorily there's a cap. Of $50,000 related to business relocation, but if there is plus potential moving costs of approximately $10,000 or less, so absolute maximum under the statutory guidelines any individual would be eligible for would be approximately 60, but it's going to be far less than that, as far as we understand.
Well, I think, yeah, so the total is $1,421,599.43. So $1,422,000.
Thank you, because as I was looking at it and adding it up, usually the vouchers are minimal, but voucher number 5 was quite substantial, and I was thinking voucher 5 and the property. So I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you. And Mark, thank you for all your efforts with us. I know this was not an easy situation.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I have to thank Noah and our city attorney, Charlotte Archer, and obviously Tierra Right-of-Way Services. And I would like to point out that we are closing on July 29th, which is my birthday. And if you remember that the Tremont ribbon cutting was also on July 29th. So we'll have all future very important actions be taken on July 29th.
Wow. It's a big ask, but we'll consider it.
It's a Friday. It's not a weekend.
Yeah, that's right. Councilor Diener?
I too wanted to thank everybody that's been involved in this. I think this project is really important for a number of people in the community, and this is just one step getting us closer to the final landing spot, if you will.
It's been a journey, and the journey's not quite done, but this was a huge step forward.
Yeah.
Right, other questions, comments? Councilmember Lucarelli, you have anything to add? All right. You'll be voting on the purchase of real property associated with the Bay Street Pedestrian Path Project. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the authorization has been granted. We're to item F, approval of amendment number 3 to contract number 063-19 with Ward C. Mueller for on-call professional surveying services. Mr. Dorsey.
Yes, thank you, Honor Council members. Much easier staff report to read into the record. On September 4th, 2019, the Port Orchard City Council approved contract number C063-19 with Ward Mueller and Associates for on-call professional surveying services, authorizing survey work for the city on a task order basis. The contract's term has been amended twice, but the original not to exceed maximum of $15,000 has remained the same. The city has identified task order surveying work that is necessary, but the estimated time for the work will exceed both the current expiration date of the contract and the current not to exceed maximum. Ward Mueller and Associates and the city have conferred and agreed to a modified contract termination date and associated fee increases to accommodate the proposed task order. Pursuant to this amendment number 3, the not to exceed amount of the contract C063-19 is increased by $68,250 from $15,000 to a total of $83,250, and to extend the contract expiration date to June 30th, 2023. Staff recommends the City Council authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 3 to contract number C063-19 with Ward Mueller and Associates for on-call professional surveying services, and extending the term and increasing the not to exceed amount to $68,250 for a total amended contract amount of $83,250.
Chang.
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 3 to contract number C063-19 with Ward Mueller and Associates for on-call professional surveying services.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Chang, a second by Councilmember Trenary. Any questions for Mr. Dorsey on this? It's pretty straightforward. All right, you'll be voting to approve a contract with Ward C. Mueller for on-call professional surveying services. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the contract has been approved. We're to item G, approval of the June 14th City Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the council meeting minutes of June 14th.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Clausen, second by Councilmember Chang. All in favor of approving the June 14th council meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, and one abstention by Councilmember Cacciardi. All right, we're to our new item H, which was previously consent item C, which is adoption of an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code sections 2.04.045, remote attendance for council meetings. Ms. Archer.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Per your request, we are discussing the adoption of ordinance amending 2.04054 of the Port Orchard Municipal Code. By this ordinance, the council would modify its authorization for council members to attend meetings remotely through the Zoom platform or by telephone. The previous iteration of that code section did not allow for the remote attendance in any condition other than in a state of an emergency. And as we've learned through the state of emergency, meetings can be held effectively utilizing remote capabilities, and we don't lose any aspect of transparency for the public or access for the public. And so the council has been discussing balancing the use of the remote technology against the need for in-person communication with staff and with the public. And the council is proposing via the ordinance to allow for up to 4 remote up to 4 times each council member may attend a meeting utilizing that remote platform. This would be in addition to the excused meetings that are allowed under the code for work or for other reasons, which are capped, I believe, at 4, other than for work purposes. So with this ordinance, that is the effective modification to the code you would make. You would be authorizing yourselves to attend up to 4 meetings per year. remotely. There would still also be that caveat in the case of an emergency, which is now also acknowledged in the Open Public Meetings Act in the event of an emergency. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or open it for discussion.
Councilmember Clausen.
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code 2.04.045 pertaining to remote meeting attendance.
Second.
By Councilmember Clausen, second by Councilmember Rosapepe. Discussion?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I think tonight is a good example, not to pick on you, Cindy, but this is an example where a council member can participate effectively remotely, and I think this just makes sense.
Right. Seems to be working. I know Cindy has a little bit of trouble hearing us, so we got to make sure we speak up, but we're making it work.
Does Councilmember Clausen have a mask on?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
That's part of the reason why that you can't be heard very well. Otherwise, I can hear all the other
I could move the microphone closer if that helps.
immensely. Thank you.
Right. Well, you'll be voting on, where are we? Adoption of an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code related to remote attendance for council meetings. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the ordinance amending the code has been approved. We have two discussion items tonight. The first is really, I know Councilmember Cacciardi chairs the Lodging Tax Committee, and I'm hopeful that we can give him some guidance related to allocations and a potential set-aside. We've got a community center that will likely break ground on 4 years, and it's going to have some operational costs. And lodging tax is an appropriate use for the operation of a community center. It isn't, lodging tax isn't going to pay for all of it by no means, but I think it can pay for a portion of it. And I just wanted to have some dialogue and discussion and potentially give some direction to Councilmember Cacciardi as they hold their deliberations. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Archer and Ms. Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, as with that lead-in, the conversation for this evening has to do with whether a lodging tax set-aside is an option related to your community center. And if there are any specific questions beyond that related to the parameters of the lodging tax process, please, I invite questions. My understanding was the conversation was focused on the set-aside this evening, but happy to have a broader conversation as well. So generally, the answer is yes, we can mechanically go through a set-aside process. What that then looks like on the back end, as far as sort of earmarking or dedicating funding, is something that we'll have to sort of grapple with as it unfolds. The lodging tax process is pretty strictly dictated that you will need to consider applications for that funding within the year. So the idea of a set-aside being sort of an earmarking of funds to make sure those funds are available in a future calendar year is permissive. An earmarking of those funds for a particular purpose is something that we'd have to sort of finesse. If that makes sense. And I obviously can't speak too much to legal risk here, but I can set those parameters. Beyond that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and Brandy is very verbose on this as well. So we are both here to help in the conversation in any way we can.
And look, go ahead, Councilmember Rose.
Oh, no, go ahead. Your comment first, Mayor.
Looking at Kingston, who operates a similar facility, they're spending about $150,000 beyond the cost of the revenue that comes in for leasing. You know, they generate revenue from events there. It is not realistic, I think, in the first year or two that we're going to get much in the way of revenue. You know, when we first open up, we'll get some, and then it's going to grow. And my thought is, if we don't allocate some dollars potentially and save some money, maybe it comes from our general fund. Maybe you don't want to do this out of the lodging tax, but I just thought it was to have some reserves or some funding to rely on when we open this up might be a smart move. And that was what my thought process is, and I wanted to have some conversation about it, whether you thought that was appropriate or not. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm fully in favor of having that conversation and looking forward, supporting a set aside. The community event is going to be utilized by everybody in the city, where we can recoup our cost. I think we should, with realistic rates, but at the same time, I think that it will generate a lot more activity when we have the plaza down there and we have the facility going. So I'm all in favor of having that discussion and taking a look at what would be an appropriate set aside from lodging tax.
Councilmember Dieter?
I will just have to agree with everything that Jay just said. And have you been tossing around how much?
Well, I think we've got 4 years till we break ground, probably 5 years at least till we open it. If we did a modest amount at $10,000 or $20,000 or somewhere in the middle, we could have a little bit of a nest egg set aside versus, oh my God, the community center's opening next year and we haven't set anything aside, and all of a sudden we take a big bite out of this and it adversely affects what we can do for our nonprofits. I think something, taken a little bit taken now and set aside for a few years, and then we've got something to fall back on in a future year. So, Councilmember Chang?
It seems reasonable. I was thinking that Bremerton is already funding, is it the Kitsap Conference Center or the Admiral?
Yeah, both.
Of course, those are already open and operating, so what we're doing is before they operate, set aside some, but it seems reasonable to me.
Thoughts? Are the dollar amounts I'm kicking around? I mean, 20?
As a start?
Yeah. Okay.
How much is the total amount annually that we get from?
About 100.
Yeah, the last 4 years, it's been about 100,000 each year.
My concern would be how it would negatively affect the nonprofits we're helping at this point. But that's a conversation we can have.
Through that process. Councilmember Rosenbeck?
I believe, Sean and Brandy, that we've actually been bringing in more funds than we've been allocating, because we've been building up, for lack of better words, a reserve. So I think that the impact may be less impactful, redundancy, on the nonprofits of where we're at. Plus, the last 2 years, we have not spent our full allocation, budgeted our full allocation. So there's some money there that we could move. I think that would be Noah's favorite word, from one direction to another. So I think, it's opening the discussion.
Or reserve the current excess for this particular issue, and not, maybe we can reduce a little bit of our annual take.
Councilmember Charity, go ahead.
I think part of the conversation that I'd like to have on this is I just want to make sure we're not talking out of both sides of our mouths. We've talked about with this committee and with this council about the idea of helping nonprofits, helping groups get off the ground, but this isn't necessarily a perpetual funding stream for them, that we would encourage the development of more events. And so I think we should consider that to make sure that we're not treating ourselves differently than maybe what other applicants are being treated. And then number 2, to make sure that we obviously engage our hoteliers to make sure that they're comfortable with what we do. Because at the end of the day, these dollars really should be focused in a manner where you're putting heads in beds. That's what creates this tax after all. And again, talking out of both sides of our mouths, I think sometimes in that decision-making process, we could say that a certain applicant isn't really benefiting those hotels. And so we need to be unbiased in our approach with this. I think it's a great concept and the conversation we should be having. Let's just make sure that we're treating everyone equally along the way.
Councilmember Clausen?
I don't dispute anything you say, Sean, but I'm taking it from the attorney that funding a community center is an appropriate use and doesn't necessarily reflect on what the other expenditures are supposed to do. So,
and then we're going to probably open up we're going to see this funding cycle, but I think we've learned some new information. It's not new information, but new to us about the ability for-profit organizations to now be able to apply for lodging tax. And I would expect, as that word now is out, that I think our applications this fall could look very differently than they have perhaps in the past.
I would have some concern over that
Yeah,
personally.
exactly, we're gonna learn from it. I'm not saying
Yeah, I
we
mean,
should
it
do
can
it, but
apply,
it'll
but-
be interesting.
They're eligible to go through the same process.
Yes, no, I appreciate that, and I would have, personally, I have less tendency to support a for-profit than I would, unless they came in with a heck of a package that's gonna bring a whole bunch of people into beds, then certainly consider it.
Or economic development in general.
So if I heard you correctly, we can't call this out for a specific purpose, but it could be very appropriate to set some additional reserves aside for a future need is kind of the caveat is what I was hearing there. So do we need to really even take any action, or is it just giving direction to Councilmember Cacciardi, or do we need to somehow pull those dollars off the table? How do you recommend mechanically we do that?
Let me give some thought to that and provide that to the committee. My hunch based on the research related to reserves, and reserves is a great way to look at it, but I don't think it mechanically has to come from council direction. I think it can be part of the typical process.
Probably likely nothing else we need to do till we take action on this, and then we might probably need to account for it a little differently somehow.
Yeah, if there's council action, I'll have to restrict those funds within the fund. So I'll work with Charlie on mechanics.
So from what I understood, in past years, we've had reserves left over, monies left over. Where are those funds? How are
They
held?
get reallocated in the next process.
So like just a couple months ago, I think it's probably been 2 months ago now, we had a special cycle because of what happened through COVID. And so this council approved some additional off-cycle funding, like $34,000 rings a bell. I think we just had that in the budget amendment. So those things can happen. So those funds are there. They're just, people couldn't have the typical festivals and events the last couple of years. And so, you know.
You can't use those funds for anything else.
Correct. But we do have funds sitting
Yes,
in an account
absolutely.
right now.
Absolutely.
And again, early on, council had made the decision that they wanted to have at least 1 year of revenue set aside in the fund in order to fund next year's activities and events. So again, this is cash flow. We're bringing in money on a monthly basis. There was discussion about what's the right level to have in order to fund future events.
And that thought process is, you guys are approving a biennial budget, and all of a sudden, the economy tanks, and we've made pledges to all of these groups that this money's going to be available, and now all of a sudden we're not collecting it. So we wanted a year's worth of revenue sitting there so that we could make good on those commitments that we're making, and not have to claw money back after we'd promised it to someone. That was the thought process. Okay, we'll move forward with that thought, and likely adding 20,000 this year to the reserves, and likely in future years to grow something near $100,000 by the time we open the community center. All right, Noah, your 2021 annual report. It's probably just acknowledging that you did it.
Congratulations.
Yes. I thought we had mentioned this, but the mayor wanted to take it again one more time to officially announce that we did file our annual report at the end of May 31st. And now we are working with SAO to bring them in to do the audit. So that's going to be exciting. And the annual report will be on the website. And if you want, I can email out tomorrow morning to all council members if you prefer.
Where would they just find it on the website? Versus,
you can search 2021 annual report, and hopefully it'll take you right to the link.
you guys want it emailed to you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would like to.
Okay, so it sounds like they do want it emailed.
Email, okay.
Or a link, either
And-
one.
Yeah.
And since we are mentioning
be a
the search function of the website, I did want to mention that in the presentation earlier on the Tbd Sales Tax, I had a reference for the Bethel Study Corridor Plan that I know Councilmember Cheney had wanted more information on that. So again, if you use that search function on the website, it'll take you to the full study, full report, because we just pulled snippets out of that to kind of facilitate the discussion tonight.
And just one more email. A lot of that print was difficult to read. If you could also send that out to the council members too.
Yep.
They have that data and can look at that data if they choose to, up close. All right, we're on to council committee reports. Let's see here. Economic Development, looks like you're meeting July 18th. Yep, it's coming up here. Utilities Committee met tonight. Who's giving that report? Councilmember Lucarelli?
Andy.
Okay.
Yes, we met tonight, and actually it was a long meeting, and I apologize for cutting it off a little earlier. We had an update on the Foster pilot project. Too many of you don't know, this is a very involved, complex water rights situation that's continually being worked on. There are no givens at this point, but it looks like we're moving closer towards water rights that we desperately need to continue forward with our wells and withdrawing the amount of water that we need. Splash pad retrofit is going to still be done this year, although as with everything else, the costs are probably increasing on that, and we're just waiting to contractors to figure out which one will take the project. We are working on a storm drainage comprehensive plan, which will be brought to work study, perhaps August, September, depending on schedules, where there'll be more information forthcoming. Stetson Heights development held up a bit for a water booster station approval, and there is a water-based discussion keeping, as I said, we have a very great report, and we'll be hearing a lot more on it. I'm very happy, actually, with what I heard tonight, and I look forward to having that all shared with everyone on the council. Thank you. Next meeting, September 13th.
All right, thank you for your report. Finance Committee is scheduled, it says TBD, but it's actually
The 19th.
next Tuesday at 5 o'clock.
Yes. Online, virtual.
Yes, just ahead of the work study. Transportation Committee meets on the 26th. And who am I missing? Lodging tax isn't on here, but you haven't met. Yep, it's coming up. Any other committees?
You have a second page.
Times and lights.
Times and lights, okay. All right, I'm missing a page. All right. And anything to report on chimes and lights?
Next week we meet.
Okay. All right. Land use meets on July 20th, looks like.
Yep.
And sewer lodging tax in October. Sewer advisory isn't meeting until August. And that concludes the committee reports.
Hey, Mayor, concerning the Land Use Committee, our engineer Ian is on vacation, and he was the only item on the agenda, so I believe that will be canceled.
Okay. All right. Good to know. All right. Mayor's report. So I talked a little bit about being an employer of choice, and that's something that Debbie and I talk about from time to time. And I just want to share, we'll be announcing our new deputy chief, I think, or somewhere around the end of the month. We conducted interviews last week with 4 finalists, and we had 7 candidates, believe it or not. And I was told by multiple people, we wouldn't find anybody. There's communities out there that can't find a chief, can't find a deputy chief. I have a practice of every new employee, I spend about 30 minutes with them during their orientation week. And most of our deputy chiefs and 2 new police officers recently told me they'd been researching our city before they applied. They watch our council meetings, they've read our annual report and reviewed our finances, they've visited our community, they've talked to our local businesses in our community. And 2 new police officers told me this is the only place they applied after doing their research. So so it's a credit to all of us in the environment and that we're creating here, and people want to come to work here. And is it easy filling every position? No, but we've got candidates, and I'm very, very, very proud of the team we've got here, and you guys are part of that. And like I say, people are paying attention, and they are watching us, even though they aren't in the chambers. That leads into our YouTube stats for June. We had in the months of June, 1,881 views of our council meetings. Now, do they watch every minute of it? No. You know, they get the fast forward through pieces they don't want to see, but 1,800 views of our council meetings. So we are being seen, you know, and it's our community, it's people thinking about moving here or applying for a job here. So I was amazed at how many people. Last Friday was my second of hopefully 3 meetings. This Friday will be the third on the Joint Transportation Committee that I'm sitting on, which is the 4 corners of the legislature, the WashDOT, Association of Counties, the Transit Association, Association of Cities, and the MPOs, and a couple of the MPOs in our state. And we met at the CCAC Conference Center last Friday. And we're working on the split of the federal money that came in between the state and local governments. And it's interesting here in the presentations that our annual deferred maintenance at the state and at the counties and at local government are all roughly $1 billion each. That's $3 billion a year. Our cities combined, our counties combined, and our states unfunded need. So it's not just our roads that are in bad shape, John. It's everybody's.
I don't care about everybody's.
I know you don't. I'm just sharing the facts. Most of the funding has been, there's a historic split. 61% goes to the state, 39% to local government. And a lot of it is put into competitive processes like the Transportation Improvement Board, the Public Works, you know, different, and the Puget Sound Regional Council, where we and our local countywide processes. The only real 2 areas that are up for negotiation are 2 new pots of dollars, the bridge fund formula dollars and funds for culvert replacement. And the state, in the latest transportation package, took all the money, and so we're a little extreme in our ask. We're asking that all the future dollars in these 2 funds be put into competitive programs. We're not saying that we get them, but because our citizens don't care whose road it is, they just want it fixed. And so we're asking for competitive processes that if the state's got, you know, the biggest need for maintenance, or a county or a city, that's what's getting fixed, and it's not being divided up by arbitrary percentages. Also, we're wanting the culvert dollars to be put into a similar fund, because the state, while they're under the injunction, them fixing a culvert up here when the Puget Sound's over here and there's a city and a county culvert in the way, it isn't fixing anything. So that's what, some of the things that I've been speaking to, and with, you know, I'm not the person with all the knowledge. I'm being supported by a very crack lobbyist from the Association of Washington Cities that many times, while I'm sitting there talking and Roger Millar says something, she's texting me what my response should be. So, but it was, we've been caucusing the states, the ports, transit hasn't been, because transit gets their own pot of dollars. They're kind of indifferent in this process, but the counties, the cities, the ports, we've all gotten together. We've been having our own meetings, so we came in with a unified position, and it was just quite rewarding to watch the Secretary of Transportation kind of grimace, because we were all kind of ganging up on him. So as required by policy, I need to report personnel policy changes, and we recently updated our substance abuse policy related to the city's drug and alcohol policies, including reasonable suspicion and post-accident testing for employees. So remember we brought in a couple of summer hires, and one of them is working with Melinda on a records project, and they're up in the attic, or the 4th floor, and I would say 50% of what they go through it has no value any longer, and about a half of it is valuable stuff, and sometimes we find a treasure. And this week we found a treasure. So there was a box of these books, and this first one I'm holding is number 100. It's the very first book. It is for the city of Sydney from October 1890. And I've tagged a couple of tabs here. This is the survey coordinates and marks, or what are they called, Mark? The coordinates?
There's bearings and distance coordinates.
For Bay Street, when we located Bay Street. And this other tab here, if you can see this, they built a wooden bridge, and it's the planks and all the lumber. It's the materials list for a wooden bridge downtown. The second volume was also the City of Sydney. The third volume was the first one that says the City of Port Orchard. It's volume 103, and it starts in...
That's when John got elected, right?
You're right about then. 1909, and it's similar.
Just a few minutes after that.
Similar data. We've got, in 1919, we've got a book about the Bay Street improvements, and it says pavement, but I'm certain that pavement was gravel.
Yeah.
I found that one interesting. Here's in 1940, I think they called them the superintendent, not the public works director. And this book has every address and every citizen listed in it. And some of the boxes across here are blank, but if we performed any public work at that property or frontage improvements or whatever, it's listed in this book. Crazy.
Did you find your house?
I hadn't looked. That's interesting. This is the newest book I found in the box. And anyone want to venture to guess the age of this particular book?
1972 to 1978.
Yeah, we looked at it. So it is 1972 to 1978. And the public works superintendent, he's got all these, the counting codes and the dates and where he made purchases for that time, because we didn't have computers back then. So this was the superintendent's log for that. So anyway, these aren't going to be in the attic anymore. I've taken a few of them. I'm going to make a little display in my office because...
Or the more interesting ones, like the one with the addresses, that would be.
They're pretty fragile.
Damaging to the spine.
Yeah, it's pretty fragile stuff.
But yeah, you don't want people touching them either.
But anyway, I thought it was pretty cool. All right, and then my other history lesson. So 100 years ago, the clerk didn't do a very good job, and the handwritten minutes were not legible. So I don't have anything to share from 100 years ago. But it's 75 years ago this month. So it's important to have and retain a good clerk because they create and maintain good records. The city and superintendent 75 years ago in 1947 attended a State Department of Transportation conference where he met with state representatives regarding the surface of Bay Street between Harrison and Seattle. So at some point, Seattle was a street coming down that great big gully, probably similar to Klein. It's not anymore. He reported there was no chance of financial aid from the state. Have we heard that before? So, all right. The council that evening also had a discussion regarding the licensing of a pinball machine in Port Orchard. So, why we would need a license for a pinball machine, but it's something new. All right. And 50 years ago, 1972, and I saw that Councilmember Rosa Pepe is doing a ride to fight hunger, and he's asking for pledges. This isn't a new thing. Mayor Paul Powers participated in a 33-mile bike-a-thon to benefit the school district's music program. That evening, members of the city council, the city engineer, the police chief, the fire chief, and the city clerk each pledged one thin dime to the cause. It collected that evening, counting the 7 council members, $1.10.
I like your odds, Jay.
You've got to worry about inflation.
Yeah.
I'll go buck.
All right, that concludes my mayor's report. Report of department heads. Mr. Dorsey, this is we've got a good of the order where I think we're going to make a few remarks about you, but this is Mr. Dorsey's last meeting this evening, if you haven't heard. Mr. Dorsey is venturing off on a new chapter in life with his wife in Arizona, and so here's your opportunity to make your last director's report, Mr. Dorsey.
Okay, well, I'm sure this will come as a shock, but I do suffer from social anxiety when it comes to praise and recognition. I don't have a problem speaking. I don't do very well accepting. I don't accept gifts or praise. So I was hoping to slip out of town and follow the sage advice of General MacArthur, where he said, "Old soldiers never die; they just fade away." But that hasn't happened so far. My staff has been extremely supportive, and then I had an impromptu meeting with just about everybody from TransTac yesterday, which I wasn't expecting. But I can't remember who it was when I first came to council. I think it was either Mayor Patansu or Council Member Clausen that said, the most important thing to do is to earn and then maintain the support and the respect of the council. And that has always stuck with me every meeting, every day. That's what I've strived to do. So I would like to thank the council and the mayor for doing just that. Of course, I have to thank my coworkers and staff, and just recognize the hard work of everybody, because the only legacy I want is not training. I came here, we wanted to be a sleepy town of 8,000, and now we're a city that is ready to take on a population of 30,000, and it was a big lift for all of us, and it's taken staff members, legal counsel, everybody, legislative, everybody to kind of get the city to that point to where we could, reorganizing, succession planning, everything that we've done just to get to this point and just to continue. So that's my only legacy I want, is that I was a part of that. So with that, I'd like to just again thank everybody for their support.
Thank you, Mark. Noah?
Well, for my department, I have no announcements or nothing new, but I did want to take this now, if that's okay, Mayor.
Absolutely.
All right. I just want to thank you, Mark, for your professionalism. It's truly been an honor to serve with you for these last 5 years, and I wish you all the best as you move forward. I know the council recognizes, but I hear out in the community with other state agencies, Mark's has a real brand out there. Serving on the Public Works Board, he's been instrumental for us receiving tons of grant money, loans, and respect throughout the state. So, I know you're going to do the same thing at your next location. So, thank you.
Nick?
All right, well, I had one official announcement, and that is that our OFM population numbers reached 16,400 in the numbers that came out on June 30th. And so Mark is correct. The city has grown tremendously under his tenure. In terms of a couple words about Mark, I think he's one of the big reasons that I'm here. I think he lobbied pretty hard with Mayor Mathis to bring me on board, and over the last 9 years, we've taken some pretty big steps in this city, and it's been a team effort between the two of us. I've learned a lot from you, and sometimes my speeches turn into more of a roast than something emotional, but I'd like to touch on a few things I've learned from Mark. There's a book of Mark-isms that's not quite Yogi Berra-isms, but it's not too far behind, and he's taught me about wrinkle-neck brown trout. He's taught me the saying that went over like a fart in a spacesuit, and a couple of other key words that I won't define, but BFR and PFM, and so I've had a lot of fun with Mark. He's taken me wakeboarding at his house. I took him snowboarding when he realized that he needed new hips about 2 years ago. He attended my wedding. So you've been a great friend. You'll be missed, and we've done a lot together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie?
Thank you. On the report side, just to flag for council that we continue to work, myself and staff, on the city's trespass policy that will be slated to be a discussion item for the work study session in September. We are still working through the parameters that we'd like to present to you for your policy input. So know that we're still working on that. That relates to trespassing on public property and has some overlap with outreach to the public as it relates to trespassing that's occurring on private property as well. And then as to Mark, you know, I've only had the privilege of working with Mark for a couple years, but it's been such an honor and a blessing to learn from him. You know, I knew he was going to be both a huge asset from the start and a huge challenge when he used the phrase sticky wicket in one of our first meetings to describe something that had legal ramifications. Don't go back and watch it, everyone. And it's just been very fun to learn from you the history of Port Orchard and just the breadth and depth of your knowledge is it's going to be impossible to replace. So thank you.
Chief?
Yeah, so I'd say the same thing. I would say institutional resource. So you and I have done a lot, and even some of the things that I'll talk about in my staff report, but I mean, having the institutional knowledge of how some things were done in the city and some of the things that we needed to do, and learning from the past and being able to kind of figure out stuff. And I appreciate the conversations that we've had. It certainly has made me better and made our community better. So thank you. To go along with that, again, I mean, Mark has been instrumental in helping us to work and change and professionalize the way that we respond to events in the community. So I just wanted to give a real brief synopsis of how the 4th of July went. We will have our after action report finished probably in the next couple of weeks, and I will get it to everyone. We just need to wait for the numbers from finance after payroll comes through this next time. So 4th of July was relatively smooth. We didn't have any calls for service that were associated with that event. There were some things that did happen within our area of operations, but nothing directly related to it. However, it was significantly larger than we anticipated. The organizers anticipated about 2,000 people. We did do walkthroughs. I was there the entire evening, and we had the drone up, just kind of making sure we understood crowd size. We're looking at about 4,000 people between Port of Bremerton and Mitchell Point. So we had to kind of work with our local partners to at least make them aware of what was going on. One of the bigger concerns that we had, and I know that there's been some discussion, council, of this already, so I just wanted to provide you some information for should you choose any future deliberations. We did struggle with some dangerous fireworks within the crowds. There are some nuances to what is considered safe and sane. There are some fireworks that are commercially available that are considered safe and sane, such as smaller reloadable mortars, or I mean, everybody's seen the cakes where they kind of shoot up the little whistler things. Those are commercially available and are generally commercially available in town. What we were seeing and dealing with in crowds and crowds of people are large mortars, large explosions. A lot of that was going into Sinclair Inlet. There was a large crowd that was in the parking lot of Bay Ford barbecuing and shooting large mortars up over the top of Bay Ford. I did reach out to the GM and talk to him about it that night, but at that point we were stretched pretty thin. We are in conversations about how we can manage that better with the commercially available but illegal fireworks in Washington State, but that we start running into some issues. So we are going to have to kind of figure that out for the future. We were encouraging people that were down along the waterfront to not do that when there are children and, again, large crowds and things are falling on it and burning cars and burning blankets. But once the crowd was large enough, we would encourage them. They would say, absolutely, we'll stop, and by the time we're out of sight, things are going aerial again. So again, something just for you for future deliberations on some of the difficulties we had.
Chief? Brandy?
Yes. So I am hoping that either at the next council meeting or at the next work study or the next regular council meeting that we can have a photo opportunity of the new full council. We haven't had a photo since Councilmember Turneri has joined the team, so I'll send out an email and see what your guys' work schedule and see what everybody's going to be.
I know I won't be in person at the work study.
Okay.
Everybody? Anybody?
Maybe end of July, early August, I'll look at the schedule and
Well, we only
email
have
you
one
guys.
meeting in August.
Yeah.
Is it tentatively, is everybody going to be here that one meeting? Because we've got a summer break. It's August 9th, I believe.
I'll have to look and see what my calendar looks like. Maybe we can Photoshop his face onto back.
On the back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, give me enough time so I can get my hair done, though, please.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's all I have to report on the business side. And then as far as Mark, although Mark did not hire me, but I think most of you guys know that I started my career with the city in the Public Works Department as a part-time job share clerk. So I lasted about 8 months, and then, as they say, I moved over to the dark side and went into the mayor and the clerk's office at the time. And Mark and I have had some interesting staff to work with over the years, and I think he's got me through most of those challenging times in dealing with different personalities within the city. And I can say that they are all gone now, and we've moved on. And I do enjoy Mark's stories and his advice on many different things, as well as his honest. How do I want to? His very honest, blunt. Opinions on certain things, and it's nice to have candid conversations with other members of the city, and that allows you to grow and think and get inspired and change things for the better. So he will be greatly missed, at least from my perspective, and I'm sure from many staff.
I'll continue this Mark party here, and Mark's stories are epic. And Nick mentioned many of the Markisms, but one that was missed is Mark referencing someone dropping a frozen turd in your pocket. I still have them. Okay, well, it carried on in your tradition. You've been here, I think, about 15 years at the city. 14. Yeah, I know that some of us were here when you joined the city, and you have many accomplishments, but I believe the biggest accomplishment was definitely the Tremont project. And when Larry Capola hired you, you were brought in to, I think, determine the constructability, and there might have been maybe some pressure to try to kill the project. And I appreciate your professionalism, because you value engineered it, changed the project, and made it constructible. And I know that you and I both got a little misty-eyed when we got that $8 million award, because we've been working hard to try to figure out how to get this thing funded, and that was really what launched us off the shore. And so you were a tremendous partner in that project and getting it done. And I shared this a little earlier about all of a sudden we've took everything we had to get to construction, and now we have a sewer line that's not as deep as it's supposed to be. We find a rock that's larger than a car that needs to be removed, and next thing you know, we're $1 million upside down that we don't have. And so Mark and I marched off to Seattle and got $1 million and solved the problem. So I think, have the utmost respect for you, Mark. I know you and your staff, you're highly respected by your peers and your staff. And I wish you the best in your next chapter of your life. So, Councilmember Clausen?
Yeah, I would like to continue this Mark party. Mark, you didn't think you were going to get away without me saying something. So, I've had the great pleasure of working with, I think, 4 or 5 city engineers during my career here at city, and I got to say that you're up there at the top. I very much appreciate your professionalism, as the mayor indicated. I also very much appreciate it, and I can share this as a comment from my staff at Transit, is that Mark has the ability to whittle down complex problems and get right to the point of an issue. And lay it out on a table so that everybody understands it. So I've always appreciated that. And I certainly know your involvement in, you mentioned the TransTac, but there's a lot of other committees that he's involved with. As we know, you're part of the, is it the TIB, their Public Works Trust Fund? Yeah, that I know that Kitsap County in general, as well as the state, has benefited from your participation there. And I certainly appreciate it. And I was kind of going through a list. Mark and one of my staff members are kind of talking about Mark's accomplishments while here. And I got to say, I don't think that, we have to vote on extending the meeting if I wanted to try to go through that entire list. But I just picked out a few just to remind, some of the accomplishments or the projects. And, in the category of the roads, I mean, the seawall improvements that you did down at Annapolis was incredible, where the road was getting undermined with the riprap down there, taking that out and replacing that. The Cedar Heights sidewalk project was a huge improvement for not only the schools but the communities up there. The boulevard repaving was more than just a repaving a street. That also kind of reconfigured that street from a 4-lane road to a 3-lane road and made improvements for pedestrian and bicycle going down there, which I thought was wonderful. Mayor, I'm surprised you didn't mention this, but working with the Busan Energy to underground the wiring downtown was a huge improvement to that section of our community, and I thought it was great. Of course, the Bay Street pedestrian path, that has been started and is ongoing as we approve some purchases tonight to keep that project moving. And I know, Mark, you've been pushing hard on that to keep it going. And then, the cap off the streets, Tremont, what more can you say? I mean, that was a huge project and a huge improvement and benefit to the community that's going to go for years and years and years. So, and then, some of the issues with our utilities. And I think probably one of the biggest unsung improvements was the conversion of the McCormick step system, putting grinder pumps in and changing that entire system over there was a huge benefit to Port Orchard and our utility, not to mention the community and all the odors and things that were coming out of that community with this, the pump stations and improvements that we made there. Of course, the Marina pump station downtown, the design and getting that project moving forward, and certainly looking forward to that. On the water side, I think probably one of the largest projects was to negotiate that agreement with the city of Bremerton that worked out the details of how we get water from them and how they get water for us, and how we would transition the water reservoir property over to them in exchange for the improvements that we received. I think that was a big deal. I think in the parks, the ones that really stood out for me, certainly somewhat local to where I live, was the Active Club improvements that you made, not only to the building, but to the playground equipment that was at that location that improved that community. And the same thing that you did up here at Clayton Park as far as the bringing in the big toy type for the kids. And then, of course, the McCormick Village Park is, I think, a superstar for the community. So that one I think was great. The city facilities, we forget about little things like the demolition of the houses over across the road and improving that property to make parking available for the employees. And that was, I think, kind of a big deal. Who could forget the library roof and the issues that we experienced with trying to just fix a water leak and some of those challenges that came about with that particular project. You know, I guess the last one I would leave in city facilities, I mean, we know about City Hall and all the improvements that we've been making here and what we need to make here. But Cindy, I'm sure you will appreciate this one, the upgrades to the electrical system on the marquee downtown so that we could continue to expand and improve the, you know, the festival chimes and lights. And then in equipment purchases, I mean, I just picked a couple, three things. One, I don't know if the full council has had the opportunity to see, and if you haven't, I would recommend that you go look at it. Mark brought in this piece of equipment, and I think it's called the Super Single Truck. This is a piece of equipment that has replaceable, detachable components that change the whole purpose of that vehicle, and it's a snowplow one time, it could be a sander, it can be a brine tank, it could be a man lift truck, it could be a flatbed truck. That was a pretty sophisticated piece of equipment that you brought into this community, that we have one truck that could do multiple things, which I was still impressed with it. The first ever camera truck in our system so that we can video the various I guess the sewer lines and storm drains and things of that nature. And then of course the new vac truck, in addition to all of the street sweepers that we've been bringing in here, to have that vac truck handy is great. And then I would just finish with just a few of the multiple grants and loans that Mark has brought in. I think I counted something like 28 grants and loans that range, as the mayor said, you know, the $8 million plus the additional $1 million and things for the Tremont project, but so many others with the pedestrian path as an example, the seawall that I mentioned earlier down in Annapolis, the improvements up around Cedar Heights, the sidewalk project, not to mention the pump station and the repair of the pump station. You know, those are all major projects that I know you were instrumental in, all of those plus so many more that, like I say, we'd have to vote to extend the meeting if I wanted to try to do the full list. So Mark, thank you. Appreciate everything that you've done for the city of Port Orchard. And I will just close with one last comment. I just recently had one of my employees that just moved, in fact drove into Arizona near Phoenix to 113-degree temperatures. So you could probably get rid of all your parkas and go to, I don't know, Bermuda shorts or something. So thank you, Mark.
Councilor Chang?
Usually when people say the 8th council member, it's not complimentary. But I would like to say that I've always appreciated your candor, your outspokenness, even though it's gotten you into trouble. I've appreciated your bluntness and your willingness to explain things in a way that I could understand, as not being a technical person. So I've really appreciated you being here. Thank you.
Councilor Rose Pepe?
When I met Mark, I was working up for the school district and came down about some, you know, what was going on with some city projects. And I always appreciated that Mark had the community's best interest at all times. And it was a pleasure working with him and getting information from him. And it wasn't, you know, this is what we're doing. It's okay. This is the information you need. This is how can I help you? What can we do better? And I really appreciated that. And obviously that's carried on since I come on in council. And in your case, I will say thank you for being the 8th council member. And you're going to be missed. And thank you.
Councilor Diener?
So Mark and I, we talked a little bit earlier, but I just want to add that, Mark, I've enjoyed listening to you over the years. I've learned from you. I've learned a lot of new industry terms and approaches to technology, and it's impressive to hear all that you've done. John did a great job putting that together. I don't need to I don't think you need to put a resume together in the future. Just have somebody watch this meeting and you'll be good to go. And then finally, I guess you're going to have to give up sailing now that you're in Arizona, but maybe you can pick up one of those land sailors or one of those land yachts they use out in the desert. But I wish you the best. We're going to miss you, and you've done a lot for this town. It really has turned a sharp corner over the years. So thank you for everything you've done.
Cindy, you have anything?
Yes, Randy, could you please change the camera so I can see Mark?
Janine?
You know, move the camera.
Or have him
Yeah,
walk
Janine
out,
can do
stand
that.
up.
Working on it.
I see. Okay. Anyway, Mark, even though I can't see you, I'm so sorry that I'm not there to say bye, and just want to thank you for your patience in really informing so many of us about the works of the city. You had a lot of patience teaching all of us about the sewers, water systems, etc. We so appreciate you, and you will be missed, really.
Thank you, Cindy. Sean?
Yes. Well, how soon are you leaving?
Well, tomorrow's my last in-office day, and then next Friday is getting on the road, I believe. So my last, I'm going to take, the mayor's let me take the cell phone so I can keep up with emails and communications until August 5th. And then I'll put it in the mail.
I will just miss you.
All righty.
You come back and visit, please.
I still have kids up here, so.
Sean?
Yeah, Mark, just echoing a huge thank you. You know, it's funny that you kind of led with that idea about earning the trust of the council. And I know for me, the last, I don't know how long it's been, almost 7 years now, I can't believe it. But from my position, trying to earn the trust of staff, right? I mean, we don't know what you all as experts know. And it is so, it makes our job easier to have such just great leadership and great experts that when you bring policy related issues to us and they're well vetted, they're well explained, the trust level we have to be able to do that. And I hope that you have felt some of that trust from councils over the years too, knowing that you need to be able to trust us to be able to support you and what you're doing as well and your team. And I think that's what's been great about I think this council experience and the team that sits over there during these meetings is just working collaboratively and having each other's trust. And I think that's what's enabled I think the city to advance in the manner that's advanced. And so I think you've set a great just tone for moving forward. And I think that the culture that's created is rooted deep. And I think that however we move on from this, I think that legacy will continue. And I hope it continues not only for future leaders and future directors, everyone sitting over there, but future councils as well, as to kind of learn from that. And you've been a big part of that, and I know for me personally. So thank you, and best of luck in your next endeavors. I know you'll kill it wherever you go.
Mark, you want the last bite of the apple?
I guess I'm the new guy, so I can't say anything more than what these guys have said, and I didn't even know most of what they were talking about. But in the time I had a chance to work with you and for you previously, it's always been a pleasure. You've always been very professional and also very, very direct, which is beneficial in a lot of ways as well. So good luck to you moving forward. You've been a very big help to our citizens and to the city, and best of luck.
So Mark, and one thing that's really flown under the radar is an individual named Katie Isaacson came to the city to come work on our water plan because of your direction. I know when I was a fairly new council member and you just started, I just become the chair of the utility committee, and our sewer and water capital operations, it was all in one bucket, and you couldn't tell. We had connection fees coming in, we had some rates coming in, and Mark and I are scratching it and we're going, I think this thing's running in the red. And so we brought in an expert, convinced the council that we had some operational challenges, and we at that, made some difficult decisions at that time and made very significant rate increases because we had to. And it was under your guidance that we had a problem we didn't know we had. And I appreciate your professionalism in helping us identify that, bringing in the right professionals, and Alan Martin and then Noah has carried the torch there to segregate these funds so that we can differentiate them very easily. So
14 years later, Katie's still helping us.
Yeah, because you brought her here. So, all right, we're running a little late, but it was I think it was a good moment to share our admiration for Mark. We are to our second citizen comment period. There's nobody in the audience, and is there anybody online? Raise your hand, and the clerk would happily bring you into the meeting to allow you 3 minutes. Last call. So anything for the good of the order? Councilmember Rosepepe?
Just because of what the chief had talked about, and after he brings his after-action report to the council, I would like to ask the council to consider having a discussion again regarding fireworks and any change in policy that we'd like to make. It would take 2 cycles, 2 years, which would give enough public notice, but I think it's worth having the discussion based on additional information that we've gotten both anecdotally and which we'll get from the chief also.
And if I might just add on to that a little bit, for me, it was kind of curious to sort of search the internet and see what the effects of fireworks can be, including the dioxins, the smoke, which I didn't realize just how bad that is to breathe, and just the impacts to the environment. So I would encourage people to just kind of search around and learn a little bit more about what some of the impacts of fireworks can be, some of which don't go away so quickly with our environment.
Anything else for the good of the order? All right. With that, our meeting is adjourned.
Yes, you have the rules there.